everyone. Welcome back, or welcome if you're new here. I'm Victoria, and I'm so glad you joined me today. Today we're going to be talking about a young girl who hasn't yet gotten her name back. Sadly, in the United States, there are more than 40,000 unidentified people who have been found, and they are generally referred to as Jane and John Does. Often these unidentified people will be given nicknames by the investigators who found them or the people in the community where they were found. They're often named after the area they were found in, or they can be given specific nicknames. For instance, in the very first video I posted on this channel, I spoke about Sharon Lee Gallegos, who was referred to as Little Miss Nobody until she was identified. The young girl we're talking about today doesn't have such a distinctive nickname. Rather, she's been given the more general name of Jane Doe 1978, though I'm sure she's not the only Jane Doe to have been given this name, so she's more clearly identified by the number 405 UFFL. Lake Harris in Lake County, Florida is just south of Leesburg, Florida. This beautiful lake is a popular recreational area, and on October 8th, 1978, 3 people decided that it seemed like a beautiful day to go canoeing on Lake Harris. As they were paddling across the lake, they passed the State Road 19 bridge, which is also called the Howie Bridge. As they were paddling along, they noticed something in the water near the shore. And when they approached this thing that they found in the water, they made a terrifying discovery. What they were seeing wasn't a thing, it was a person. What I think is even more horrifying is that it was obvious that however this person ended up in Lake Harris, it wasn't by accident. The 3 canoeists called police to tell them about what they found, and a short time later, the area was taken over by investigators. And as horrible as it would be to have found someone accidentally dead in the water, the reality of what they found was so much worse than that. This person was a young black teenage girl. She was nude and had no jewelry on. Her wrists and ankles had both been bound with white wire coat hangers. She had also been gagged by 2 bandanas, one white and blue and one yellow and blue, tied around her face. And unfortunately, there was really no evidence in the area to be collected. So, the girl's body was taken to the medical examiner in hopes that they would find something while investigators were trying to identify her. It didn't take long at all for investigators with the Lake County Sheriff's Office to discover that no women or girls fitting this girl's description were reported missing in their area. And as the days passed and no one came forward to report their teenager missing locally, they began to worry about their ability to identify the Jane Doe. As the police turned to the coroner, the autopsy had revealed interesting details about the girl, but nothing that would specifically identify her or her killer. It had been obvious by her initial state that she had been murdered. The medical examiner was also able to identify that her cause of death was forcible drowning. Horrifically, investigators believed that she had been thrown from the bridge, still alive, while gagged and bound, and then allowed to drown in the water. This girl was likely between the ages of 16 and 18, and they believed she'd been killed sometime between 3 and 6 days before she was found. Though she had begun to decompose, her face was still intact and recognizable. She had very closely shaved black hair, and they believed that it had recently been shaved and her hair was just growing back. And investigators felt that her head being shaved may indicate that she would normally wear wigs. Her fingernails and toenails were painted red, but what was interesting was that they were described as being cut abnormally short. Now, there aren't a lot of details about this, but it was something that I really stuck on, because it was very specifically reported each time that they were cut, not bitten off, not ripped off, not torn, but cut. And there also wasn't any information about if the nail polish was intact or not, because my first thought was the nail polish broken where they had been cut short after they'd already been painted? Or was she someone who cut her nails super short and then painted them, had her killer cut them super short and then painted them? So I wasn't really able to find any of those details, but it was something that jumped out at me that I was like, well, were they cut before they were painted or after they were painted? She had her natural teeth with no fillings or restoration in them. based on a comment made by the Lake County Chief Deputy Dan Schism in a 1978 interview with the Orlando Sentinel. It seems like she just hadn't received any dental work. She had brown eyes, was between the height of 5'2" and 5'5", and weighed somewhere between 100 and 120 pounds. Her ears were pierced, but she wasn't wearing any earrings at the time she was found. And she also didn't have any scars or birthmarks. I haven't read anywhere whether or not the medical examiner believed that she may have been sexually assaulted. I have questions about that because she was found nude, but she was also found in the water, and it was the 70s, so that very much could have been hard to identify. But her clothes being gone also could have been a countermeasure so that her, clothes couldn't identify her, or they could have been a fear tactic, like they took her clothes from her while she was still alive, just to keep her in line and scare her. There's several explanations for why that could have happened, but I figured that would be a question, and I couldn't find anything about whether or not she was assaulted. And even with all the information we did have from the autopsy, none of it was going to help identify her. Because her face wasn't as decomposed and still recognizable at the time, investigators did bring in a sketch artist to draw what she may have looked like in life. It's not the most amazing sketch, but it shows generally how she looks. At least, I hope it did, because this was the image circulated at the time. Investigators shared this image with the public in hopes that it would help identify the girl, but more time slipped past, and no one was coming forward about her. In that same interview I mentioned earlier with the Orlando Sentinel, Chief Deputy Schism said, "We've already exhausted the fingerprint and footprint checks, and she had little or no dental work. It just doesn't look good." I wasn't able to find a ton of newspaper coverage about her being found at the time or the investigation. I'm usually able to find more, but it just doesn't seem like she was talked about very much. There were some other big crimes in Florida going on at the time, people being prosecuted and other things happening, so I don't know if maybe her story got lost in all of it. The only lead that police really got in this investigation was a tip about a man who was seen about 2 days before the girl was found. The witness said that they saw a black man parked on the State Road 19 bridge, and he was standing behind his parked car with the trunk popped open. No other details were ever shared about this tip, though, so I don't know if investigators were able to, find the man that was talked about, or if, they had more details to begin with, or were able to get more details, because this description is pretty vague and unhelpful. Chief Deputy Schism also expressed extreme frustration with not being able to find anybody who was reported missing who matched this girl's description. He's quoted as saying, "You'd think some of her own people would have reported she was missing. We've done everything we know to do. We're still checking all the leads that may even come close, but we have very little to go on. One problem we have is that many people are just not reported missing by their parents." And while this may be true, I do believe there are several other factors that could have played a role in this. First of all, this was the 1970s. If this girl wasn't from this area, it would have been very hard for investigators to be able to find a missing persons report about this girl from another state, even another county. Second, again, because it was the 1970s, her family very well could have believed that they had to wait 24 to 48 hours to report their loved one missing. Then the report could have gotten shuffled out of the way while they were, running around trying to find out who this girl was. Or if she was reported missing beforehand, it could have gotten shuffled out of the way there. Which could also be true if this girl had a history of running away. Perhaps she went missing in an area outside of Lake County, but she was known for having a troubled past or a history of running away from her home. Police could have wrote off any concerns from her family about the fact that she was actually missing and just told them that she would run away and would come back eventually. And it's possible that the police may have never actually submitted a missing persons report in this situation. We know that this happened with several cases in the 1970s and 1980s, so it's not out of the realm of possibilities. And of course, one very sad theory that I hate to even have to bring up is that she may not have been reported missing if her parents or guardians had something to do with her death. If she was 17 or 18 and old enough to be out of school, and her neighbors didn't know the family that well. It could very well have been that her parents killed her and dumped her and nobody knew to ask questions. It's not uncommon for abused children to be very isolated. And so there is a chance that if she was abused and killed by her family, that there was really no one around her to look for her when she was gone. It just breaks my heart that there have still not been any answers for this poor girl. She doesn't have her name, and despite the last theory I suggested, there's a very good chance that she has family and friends out there who love her and miss her and never found out what happened to her. In recent years, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children created a composite photo of what the girl may have looked like in life. I do think while looking at these pictures, it's really important to pay attention to her face. Though police theorize that she shaved her head and wore wigs in life, this may not be the case. Her head may have been shaved after she went missing, which means that this wouldn't be a hairstyle those around her recognize. Or if she did wear wigs, those around her may have very well been used to seeing her with a specific wig or hairstyle that she wore all the time. So please, if you are watching this because you have a missing loved one or know of someone fitting this description who went missing around you, focus on her face. If you or someone you know had a Black teenage girl or young woman go missing around you in or around the year of 1978, please call one of the following numbers. You can call the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children at 1-800-THE-LOST, or you can contact the Lake County Sheriff's Office at 352-343-9529. Hopefully, with all the advancements of DNA technology and the far reach of true crime in the current day, this young Jane Doe will have answers soon. This beautiful Jane Doe's life was taken away from her much too early, and she deserves her name back. She deserves justice, and her family and friends deserve to know what happened to her. And with that, that's all I have for you on this case. Thank you so much for watching, and if you made it all the way to the end of this video, you are the absolute best. I love you. So stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!